music to get in the mood for our spooktacular today. It sounded like Wolfman versus UFO music, but it was a new song for me. I like that one. We're here doing another Halloween show. Can't get enough of that at this time of the year. Barbara's here with us, and we brought another supernatural expert for a third co-host. Please make welcome Delbert Grady, and we also have Rob Sullivan as our guest. We are quickly approaching Halloween, and we're here that it's at this time of the year that this is when the veil is the thinnest, and we can easily communicate with the other side. And Christian schools are going to downplay the ghosts of this season and focus on the end of the year season harvest, and kids are enjoying the candy and creative costumes. But is it really a demonic night? We have 31 days of scary movies on the Turner Classic Movie channel. So to help us make sense of all of this, Rob is here to talk with us and just get his observations on Halloween. Rob's been a long-time regular on Nightlight discussing his Arch of Enoch, Pact with the Devil, Cinema Symbolism 2, and the soon-to-be released Cinema Symbolism 3. Hey, Rob, how are you?
Hey, Mark. Thanks for having me on Nightlight for another Halloween special. It's a pleasure to be here. I was first about 5 years ago. Another host approached me to do a Halloween show, and I thought, oh, what a great idea! Let's do it. And last year, someone approached me also to do it, and I've kind of laid low off of radio for a little while. I kind of really wanted to concentrate on getting Cinema Symbolism 3 done, and it is complete. I am finished it. It probably won't come out till next year, of course. In fact, I know it won't. And I haven't done any radio in a while, and I know that you and Barbara had wanted to have me on, and I kind of said, well, let's do a show once the book comes out. But then as Halloween, was right around the corner, I thought, oh, well, let's do another seasonal radio show on Halloween and maybe touch on some horror movies and things like that. And, they always seem to be kind of popular. And, like I said, it's a nice little break to return to the airwaves. I haven't done anything, I don't think, since around March or April. Like I said, I spent the summer really just writing Cinema Symbolism 3, getting that out, or finishing it up, I should say. And it probably won't come out until probably March or April of next year, I would think. So returning to the airwaves, doing a Halloween seasonal special is always something I look forward to. And, it's going to be a good show. So, here it is, Halloween, and let's talk some horror films.
Yeah. So before we get into your analysis of all these classic movies, maybe we ought to look at the origins of Halloween and work our way up to today. So,
right.
What are some of these like folklore traditions with the costumes and handing out the candy, and when did all this begin, and where?
It's a pre-Christian celebration going back. It originally originates in Europe, and it was the festival of Samhain. It's spelt Samhain, or it's Samhaim, but it's pronounced Samhain. And it's a Druidic Irish Celtic festival marking the halfway point between the autumn equinox and the winter solstice. And it's the end of the harvest. It's the celebration of the oncoming darkness of November and December with the winter months. And of course, Christmas is the celebration of the birthday of the sun, the resurrection of the sun. And essentially between Samhain, October 31st, and December 25th, this is the darkest part of the year. And on October 31st, this was when, as you said during the intro, when the veil was down, when the darkness was overcoming the light, and when the spirits of the dead and demons were giving license to roam the countryside. And this is where a lot of the customs from Halloween come from. The whole idea of like carving jack-o'-lanterns, placing them on your doorstep at night on October 35th, on October 35th, that's usually where my mind is, on October 31st, this was a protective talisman to keep spirits away from your house, to keep the spirits of the dead, perhaps unwanted demons, out of your abode, out of your dwelling. It's a death's head. It's supposed to look like a human skull. So this is where the carving of jack-o'-lanterns come from. And the same thing with costuming and wearing of costumes was to become unrecognizable on that night, so you couldn't get plagued or tormented by spirits walking the countryside. And another custom was that you were supposed to put out on your doorstep or in front of your dwelling baked goods, candies, breads, pastries, and this was an offering to the dead to basically take one of these and keep going, essentially. Just stay out of my house, stay out of my abode, stay out of my dwelling. And of course, this is the modern day custom of trick-or-treating. And, it morphs into in England, there is Halloween celebrations, but they were overshadowed, and they kind of still are, by a festival, by a celebration that takes place on November 5th, which is Guy Fawkes Night. So Halloween, and even in England, it's caught on more and more over the years, but it's still kind of overshadowed by Guy Fawkes Night, which is November 5th. But of course, it becomes very popular in the United States, and it really is still, up until modern times, it's sort of a children's holiday. And this really sort of changes with the release of Carpenter's Halloween in 1978, which really reinvests the holiday with this dark paganism, this idea of, the night that the devils come out, that the witches roam freely, that the dead walks among us, and really reinvents the Halloween reinvents the Halloween and the holiday in general as this time of deep darkness, a foreboding holiday, things like that. So it's really caught on in the last 20 years. I mean, I think I saw somewhere that it's like, the most, behind Christmas now, the most popular holiday to decorate for. And I mean, I was born in 1971, so even growing up as a kid, Halloween you didn't really start seeing Halloween decorations, really until about a week before the holiday. Now this isn't the case. I mean, you got jack-o'-lanterns and decorations all over the place, easily starting on October 1st. So it's really become popular in the last 5 to 10 to 15 years or so.
Yeah, Rob, you had a great segue into just getting the movie Halloween set up so we could start analyzing that the first one, and we can get into 2 and 3, and you really do make a good argument in Cinema Symbolism 2 that Halloween 3 is actually a really good movie that fits into these pre-Christian ideas. So let's maybe want to start with your analysis of the Michael Myers character and Dr. Loomis.
Yeah, well, we can touch on all three of them.
Okay.
Yeah, Halloween Part 1, and this was they just released a sequel to this last year, or Halloween, I call it Halloween 2018. That movie's very interesting. That's something I'm doing in Cinema Symbolism 3. Halloween 1 is really a fascinating movie because it really, the Michael Myers character, it's called The Shape, really is the personification or this epitomizing these dark forces that roam Halloween night, that can't be stopped, that are there, that are omnipresent, and you just can't get rid of it. I mean, it's just there, and you can try to avoid it, but you can't get rid of it, essentially. There's some very interesting symbolism in Halloween. I've talked about this before, and this is pretty common knowledge now, so I'm not going to delve into it too deep. Of course, the mask that Michael Myers wears is William Shatner from Star Trek. They got a Captain Kirk mask, cut the eyes out, matted the hair, painted it white. Voila, The Shape, this emotionless face that he wears. It works for great effect, by the way. That's much more well-known, so I'll kind of stay off that. But, you do have the Loomis character who is sort of, the Jungian psychoanalyst, sort of the wizard, Hermes, Trismegistus figure, knows Michael Myers, understands him that he's this unstoppable force. Even in Halloween 2, he talks about how Halloween, witches and goblins, it's all part of the subconscious mind. It's all part of, the unconscious mind. It's just manifestations in reality, essentially. And that's interesting. I love in Halloween Part 1, and this carries over into Part 2, and they're in there because they're some of Carpenter's favorite movies, but they really do have a deeper psychological, symbolic undercurrent. And that's, the next time you're watching Halloween Part 1 and then it gets into Part 2, you'll notice that there is a horror movie marathon going on, hosted by a person named Dr. Dementia. I should point out that Dr. Dementia is voiced by Tommy Lee Wallace, who is the director of Halloween 3. You'll hear his voice all over the place. If you're a fan of John Carpenter and Deborah Hill, Tommy Lee Wallace directed Halloween 3. He is the voice of the Horrorthon in Halloween, and he is the voice of the KAB voiceovers in The Fog. And he is also the voice of the Silver Shamrock commercials in Halloween 3. So that's Tommy Lee Wallace. And during Halloween, you'll pay attention to this Dr. Dementia Horrorthon, where the Dementia is hosting 3 horror movies. I think one of the babysitter talks about it, where it's The Thing, Forbidden Planet, and then in Part 2, it's Night of the Living Dead. And these were all, Carpenter has said that these are 3 of his favorite movies. Of course, he remade The Thing in 1982. But, upon cursory glance, you can say, oh, it's just nostalgia, it's just a trip down memory lane. But when you actually look at them, they're actually reflecting what's going on inside the actual movie. So the first movie, and this ties into what Loomis is talking about, so the first movie that you see is The Thing. And if you're familiar with that movie, this is a movie that takes place in the North Pole, where the Air Force discovers a space alien, and he becomes in the shape of a human being. He can't be reasoned with, he can't be bargained with, and they just got to stop it. They got to get rid of it. The scientist there thinks he can argue with it and reason with it and tries to learn from it. And, of course, the other ones know that it must be destroyed. And, of course, this is reflecting Michael Myers, where it's the opposite, where Loomis knows that Michael Myers is this epitomizing these dark forces that can't be reasoned with, that can't be bargained with, that just has to be completely eliminated or destroyed entirely. So this is a parallel with The Thing and The Shape in Halloween, where The Thing is a space alien taking the form of a human being that can't be reasoned with or bargained with. And this is, of course, the same thing with Michael Myers, this creature that represents, all the evil associated with Halloween being personified that can't be reasoned with or bargained with, that just has to be destroyed. So we have that parallel. Then the next movie up in Dementia's, in the Dr. Dementia Horrorthon, is Forbidden Planet. This is very interesting on a psychological level, because in that movie, the character Dr. Morbius projects his shadow personality. And it's a long story. I delve into it much more in Cinema Symbolism 3. But the whole underpinning is that what Freud called the id, or what Jung called the shadow, this character in Forbidden Planet known as Dr. Morbius, projects this shadow personality outward. It manifests, and it winds up killing the crew of this spaceship that has landed. And the whole idea of the projection of the shadow self is epitomized by Laurie's two friends. This is Annie and Linda, who are the polar opposites of Laurie. They have no problem satisfying their libidos, engaging in mischief at night. They willingly engage their shadow personalities, their ids, to satisfy their libidos. And of course, Laurie does not. She remains a virgin. She remains virginal, the good girl, the conscientious babysitter. So the projection of Laurie's id, her shadow personality, actually manifests at the end of the movie, where the fight with Michael is a version of her sex act. She's stabbing Michael over and over again with phallic symbols, the phallic knife, the pointy clothes hanger, the pointed sewing pin or sewing needle. This for Laurie is a sex act that she's releasing her id, her shadow self, and this is what's going on in Forbidden Planet. This is very fascinating. So the movies of this Dr. Dementia Horror-thon are actually being manifested in the movie. And then you go to the sequel, Halloween 2, where the third movie in Dr. Dementia's Horror-thon is Night of the Living Dead. And this is, again, what Michael Myers is become. Now he's the risen dead, right? I mean, he's killed and resurrected. And this is what's going on inside Night of the Living Dead, where the main character, who is, again, straight-laced, very uptight, Barbara, is trying to escape her brother, who gets turned into a zombie and is trying to kill her. And, of course, this is what winds up happening in Halloween 2, where Laurie is trying to escape her brother, Michael, who has likewise been turned into a zombie. So this is really fascinating, where you have these three movies of Dr. Dementia's Horror-thon actually being representations of what's going on inside the movie of Halloween Part 1 and 2. Very fascinating. I really enjoyed seeing that there for the first time. And it's something I talk about in Cinema Symbolism 3, just how the movies of Halloween Parts 1 and 2 are actually representing what's going on inside of the actual movie you're seeing. Very fascinating, very well done by Carpenter.
Yeah, and Rob, you throughout your analysis of the Halloween movies, you are also making these connections from ancient history, like Hermes Trismegistus, to setting a character like that in modern times. That's one of the really interesting aspects of your book, is just that taking that analysis deeper than just Michael Myers is just the bad guy, and
no,
maybe it's you're taking it so much more deeper into what John Carpenter was really envisioning.
Yeah, it's the archetypes. It's archetypal imagery, with Loomis being the Hermes know-it-all, the Hermes Trismegistus archetype. This is, again, I talked about this on other shows. This, of course, is, Albus Dumbledore, Obi-Wan Kenobi. This is Morpheus in the Matrix films. It's the wizard archetype. It's the wisdom provider archetype, the old sage provider. I mean, and it's, this is what Jung talks about. It's very critical to understanding movies. And, you had mentioned in the previous part, I should just delve into it real quick, Halloween 3. Just briefly on that one, this is a movie that I analyzed in Cinema Symbolism 2. This is a fantastic movie. It was beat up terribly at the time that when it was released, because it didn't have Michael Myers in it. It was subtitled Season of the Witch. Probably would have done a lot better if it had just remained that night title, but it probably wouldn't have gotten made if it didn't have Halloween in it. in the title, Halloween 3. Of course, it's a standalone. It has nothing to do with parts 1 and 2. But it's a very important movie because, for starters, it's a very good movie. It's very entertaining, and it's incredibly fun to watch, especially around Halloween. But it's one of the first movies that fuses witchcraft with the computer age. There are only 2 of them. The 2 first movies, at least the ones that I can think of, that fuse witchcraft and the occult and black magic with computer technologies. The 2 that come to mind is Halloween 3 is one of them, which was released in 1982. And then the other one, I think, was released in 1981, was Evil Speak, which is another great film that fuses black magic and demonic sorcery and Satanism with computers. So if you've never seen Evil Speak, check that one out. That's a very dark movie. That's a very good movie. Again, very dark, but very entertaining. Halloween 3, I love. The movie has been completely rehabilitated. It has definitely found a new audience. I never saw it in the theater. I saw it on cable, and people just routinely put the movie down because it didn't have Michael Myers in it. And right. I remember watching Halloween 3. I was probably like 10, 11, maybe 12 years old at the time, and I saw it on cable for the first time. And I remember watching. I just really liked it. I mean, I loved how in that one it's almost like the anti-archetypes, where the damsel isn't rescued, the damsel in distress gets killed. The wizard figure is the evil wizard, who is you look at Connell Cochran. This is the James Bond character, the James Bond villain who always fails, but in Halloween 3 seems to succeed. I really like that. And then, the character of the hero, Dan Chalice, Dr. Chalice, this guy's kind of a bum. I mean, he spends the entire movie chain smoking, drinking, and hiding from his ex-wives and kid. So these are like anti-archetypes almost, but it works. Sometimes when you take an archetype and you reverse it, it becomes appealing also, just because for what it isn't. And I think Halloween 3 succeeds on many levels. It's a very good movie. If you've never seen it, by all means, watch it. And if you saw it and you didn't like it, give it another chance.
And another, we don't have to go into like a lengthy analysis, but you did remind me that the Herman Munster character in Pet Sematary is almost like the same type of Hermes character as Dr. Loomis from Halloween.
Oh, I agree.
I thought that was a really excellent analysis on your part to show how he comes out of ancient mythology to stay relevant to today's audiences about analyzing what's really going on. He has the inside track on the truth.
Exactly. The character, it's I forget the character's name. It was Fred Gwynn, I believe, who played him. This is in Pet Sematary. I forget the name of the character.
Is it Judd?
Yeah, Judd. He I forget Judd Crandall, I believe it is. He is the same guy. I mean, it's the character who knows everything but dispenses the information piecemeal. And it's the old, sage type, solitary hermit figure, Hermes Trismegistus. It's the hermit card of the tarot if you want to see what this, the graybeard figure, who again possesses the esoteric insights as to what's going on, but generally only doles it out piecemeal. And again, this is the Loomis, Dr. Loomis character played wonderfully by Donald Pleasance in Halloween. This, again, is Morpheus in the Matrix films, or Obi-Wan Kenobi, or Albus Dumbledore, or Gandalf in Lord of the Rings. This character's origin is in ancient mythology. A lot of the characters, in movies are based on ancient archetypes, ancient mythology. Archetypal imagery. if you're interested in that, by all means, read my books. I talk about it. This is what I base my books upon. I mean, this is a cornerstone of one of my books. If you want to go further, I mean, by all means, you need to read the works of Joseph Campbell. The Hero with 1,000 Faces is a wonderful book. I highly recommend. This is a book that I lean on and cite routinely in my book. There's another book called The Power of Myth by Campbell and Bill Moyers. This was a dialogue between them. That's another good book I highly recommend. Another book that is must be read if you're interested in this is a book. I'm probably painting with a little bit of broad strokes here when I call him the British version of Joseph Campbell. Probably, painting with a little broad strokes, but a guy named J.G. Fraser. You want to read his book called The Golden Bough. He wrote that book's about comparative magic, comparative religion, comparative sorcery. Again, this is another book that I lean on. My analysts, when I analyze Halloween and the holidays like Christmas, he talks about that in The Golden Bough, about Halloween, being this fire celebration, coming out of the British Isles, celebrating the dead. This was the night that witches and goblins and ghouls were given license to terrorize the land. And, he gets into the, sun worship as well, December 25th. So, yeah, I mean, these books are cornerstones. And again, these are books that I rely upon: Joseph Campbell, J.G. Fraser, of course, Symbolism. You're going to get into Manly P. Hall, Albert Pike, Madame Blavatsky. These are all wonderful books as well. So, yeah, I mean, if you're interested, these are books that I rely upon because why they're critical is that they talk about this ancient mythology that turns up in modern popular culture. And, that this is how you analyze this, by applying the ancient to the modern.
Rob, you just mentioned the tarot cards and specifically the Hermit one. And, I don't think we've really spoken about that. I don't know if there's a Halloween connection to the cards, but several of the movies that you do discuss have scenes where there is a recreation of the card.
Yes.
Can you tell us a little bit about a couple of those examples?
Yeah, absolutely. Again, when you're dealing with tarot cards, you're dealing with archetypal imagery and the archetypes. If you're interested in this, you need to read the works of Carl Jung. There's a wonderful book on tarot, on the tarot cards. It's my favorite. I have loads of books in my library on tarot cards. My favorite one that I am constantly turning to is a book, and it's called The Tarot, surprisingly, and it's by a man named Richard Cavendish. It came out in the 1970s. I know you can get it. I'm sure it is long out of print. If it's in print, it's been reprinted. But you could probably find it on eBay or, on Amazon as a used book or on Abe Books or something like that. It won't break the bank. I mean, it probably costs you maybe around, because it's an out-of-print book, probably around $25, maybe $40. But Cavendish's book is fantastic because he goes through every one of the cards and he gets into, what it meant to the Golden Dawn, the Egyptian symbolism, the archetypal symbolism, the traditional symbolism, when the cards reverse, the positive attributes, the negative attributes. And yeah, I mean, these cards can come alive. The Tower card, destruction, is, you find that card in Black Swan with the Beth McIntyre character who just wants to destroy herself. The Ace of Cups, gets tipped over in Robin Hood, The Adventures of Robin Hood, with Basil Rathbone and Errol Flynn. You have the Silver Chalice getting knocked over. That's the Ace of Cups. When the Ace of Cups is reversed or knocked over, it signifies ill omen and bad things are on their way. And of course, in The Adventures of Robin Hood, this means that Robin Hood's on his way and he's going to right the wrongs and restore King Richard back to the throne. And trash King John. Archetypes, the Hermit, again, we discussed about that with Dr. Loomis and Judd, the wizard, the character who knows everything and dispenses it piecemeal. Certainly, you get into some of the lesser arcana of the tarot. Because she's not a major player in the movie, we turn again to Black Swan with the mother character, who's the bitter mother who's jealous. This is the Queen of Swords reversed, who signifies that. The Empress card is Maid Marian in Robin Hood. So yeah, I mean, it's when you're dealing with tarot and these the major trumps, the major arcana, the shadow gallery, whatever you want to call it. These cards can come alive because they're archetypal, and a lot of the characters in movies are archetypes. So you will clearly, not all the time, but you can definitely link the archetypes of film to tarot cards, becoming living embodiments of the tarot. The Magician card, the Agent of Change. This is probably one of the most popular ones. This is Dale Cooper of Twin Peaks. This is Lily in Black Swan. The magician is, by far and away one of the more powerful archetypes. The person who's injected and upends things. If you want to see, some of the things I talk about in the book is when you find, the archetypes exist among us. You will find archetypes, existing, amongst the living. There's a book on that by Sally Nichols called Young in the Tarot, and she talks about how not only are these archetypes, not only do these archetypes exist in popular culture, and they originate in ancient mythology, then they turn up in popular culture. She takes it one step further, and I agree with her, how they become people in reality. The Fool becomes Lynette Frome when she tried to assassinate President Ford. The 13th card of the tarot is Dylan Klebold and Eric Harris, the Columbine shooters, who killed 13 people, echoing the card's attributes, death. You have, the magician, the disruptor, the agent of change, Donald Trump, who was born in June under the house of Gemini. Well, what planet rules Gemini? Mercury, of course, the disruptor, the destroyer of worlds. So these archetypes exist in reality, and they draw humankind to it like a moth to flame. I mean, this is why people are fascinated by people like, Harrison Klebold and with Trump. Humanity is hardwired to these archetypes. They exist in ancient mythology. They exist in our subconscious minds. They exist in popular culture. They turn up on the silver screen. And yes, they do walk amongst us, personified as real human beings.
And you do mention the temperance card, and that was it the hand with candles that appears in the Wicker Man. So the variety of scenes in the movies that you analyze it, take us back to these cards and what was in the original intent in the cards gives us such a new vision for what the director is really trying to convey to us, and I just really enjoy the wide variety of movies in your books that make us reevaluate what we're seeing. Like at this time of the year, in the movies are running all day long.
Yeah, I mean, it's again, you're dealing with archetypes exist in the subconscious mind. They're subconscious. So when you make them conscious, you are drawn to them. And that's the whole idea, is you may not be able to that's one of the reasons I wrote my book, is to recognize this stuff.
Right.
If you don't, you will recognize it unless you are trained to recognize it. One of the things that you mentioned briefly was the temperance card. And I don't have my book in front of me, but if you watch the original Suspiria movie from 1977, I talk about this in Cinema Symbolism too. They remade this movie. They remade it. They re-envisioned it, I should say, last year. I'm talking about that in Cinema Symbolism 3. That's a very dark movie as well. But the original Suspiria from 77, and I don't believe this was intentional, but I believe it speaks to the power of the archetypes and the tarot. The end of that movie, and again, I don't have my book in front of me, but the end of Suspiria, starting with when Susie Bannion, Jessica Harper, goes and speaks to Milius, the psychologist, who again is your Hermes Trismegistus figure, your Loomis character, as it were. From that point on to the end of the movie is literally like cards, and I don't have the book in front of me. It's like cards like 9 through 20 of the major arcana in order. You can literally, if you understand the symbolism of the card, you can literally go through the deck of the tarot for about card 9 through 20, and it appears on the screen. Not the actual card, but the archetypal imagery, the archetypal associations with that card go bang, 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 right in order. I mean, you have the Hermit, you have, Temperance, you have the Wheel of Fortune, Death, the Tower. They all come bang, 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 right in order. And it's fascinating. It's like when you watch Suspiria, the end of it, this is the 77 movie, and you're familiar with this, I mean, it's like, my God. I mean, you're just literally watching, a tarot deck, being like flipped over on the big screen in front of your eyes. I mean, and it's just, incredible. It's incredible to see. And like I said, to me, it really just speaks of, and evaluates the power of this archetypal imagery. And again, this is, like I said, cornerstone research that my movie books are based upon. How these ancient doctrines surface in popular culture. It's a very fascinating study. Like I said, it's something I love writing about. I love investigating, and of course, I love coming on shows like yours, Mark and Barbara, to talk about.
Yeah, and we can look at your photo of the Hanged Man on page 184, and then you have a juxtaposing photo from one of the Batman, the Dark Knight, where Heath Ledger is hanging upside down, and it's like a recreation of the card.
Absolutely.
So that's all just self-explanatory. You just look at the two photos. Hey, it's right there, and that could take us into talking about the new Joker movie. That seems to be getting a lot of attention. How are these archetypes still being used as we get into nearly the second decade of the 21st century?
Well, there's two questions there. The first one is the Hangman card. I'll deal with Joker in a minute. The Hangman card is the arch traitor, is the arch enemy card. I mean, that's the villain, associated with Judas Iscariot. So in Batman, in the Dark Knight movie, who's the arch enemy of Batman? Of course, it's the Joker, Heath Ledger, and he turns up as a hanged man. I first started talking about this is something that I mentioned, I believe, in the original movie book, or maybe it wasn't. No, this was in, I can't remember where I first started mentioning this. Maybe it is in the first cinema book. When did that come out? Yeah, I think I mentioned it in the very first Cinema Symbolism book about how the Joker character played by Ledger. Yeah, the movie came out in 2008. Yeah, that's right. So I talked about this in my first cinema book, how the Hangman card was being reproduced in The Dark Knight with Ledger being hung upside down. And a couple of people beat up on me and said, oh, this is just a stretch. And then in the Suicide movie, a couple years later, you had Jared Leto playing the Joker in that exact same occult posture. as the Hanged Man card, and I put that book on I put that image in the book where he's laying there with the leg, with his leg touching his kneecap, and and the camera zooms around to make him look upside down with the knives radiating out from his head like the sun behind the Hanged Man card. It's a complete reproduction of that card, and again, it's transferring the imagery of the arch enemy to the Joker from the Hanged Man card. No question that isn't being done, and like I said, that is not a coincidence by any stretch. Yeah, the new Joker movie, a lot to delve into, and I haven't even seen the thing yet. What I have seen, very dark movie from what it looks like. Like I said, I've seen all the trailers and all the previews. I do know the ending of the movie, so I will get into a little spoiler here. If people haven't seen it, maybe they want to turn it off. But I haven't seen the movie, but I know how it ends. But yeah, the Joker makeup that Joaquin Phoenix is wearing is modeled after John Wayne Gacy of all things. I mean, how dark is this? The Pogo the Clown persona of Gacy, where the blue triangles around the eyes, Gacy's makeup, whether Gacy did it subconsciously or not, is modeled after a human skull. The grin, the dark red grin, and then the blue triangles around the eyes are, the deep eye sockets is designed to look like a human skull. And of course, Gacy, was murdered 33 young boys and men and buried them in the crawl space of his home. So yeah, I mean, we're dealing with you have a villain from the DC universe who, the Joker, his makeup is based upon John Wayne Gacy. So I mean, it's very dark. And this is actually confirmed in the movie where the character of Joaquin Phoenix, I believe his name is Arthur Fleck, he actually is performing in a comedy club at one point, and the name of the comedy club is Pogo's. And again, this is named after John Wayne Gacy's alter ego. So you have the Joker's makeup based upon John Wayne Gacy and the comedy club named after John Wayne Gacy, a serial killer. Very, very, very dark imagery indeed, to say the least. Then there is a twist in this movie, and I don't know if people are aware of this or not, but I don't know if this is just a case of Jungian synchronicity or if this was intentionally done by the filmmakers for the Joker. And I'll spoil the movie here, so if you haven't seen the movie and you don't want to know the end of it, maybe you want to just turn it down right now or fast forward ahead a little bit. But the end of the Joker movie, you watch the movie, and then the end of the movie is the Joker in an insane asylum, essentially basically indicating that the story you have just seen is his narrative. This is what's called the unreliable narrator twist ending. Where what you have seen may not be 100% true. It could be the creation of a mentally ill person, the Joker, Arthur Fleck, being in the asylum. We don't know. It's left for you to speculate. What's true, what isn't? Is it all made up? Is it all true? You don't know. There are clues placed out the movie that indicate a lot of it is made up in the Joker's head or Fleck's head. I'm not going to get into that right now. But what is very interesting about that is that harkens back to another movie. This is, again, what's called the unreliable narrator twist ending. Well, what is really fascinating about this is, and again, I don't know if this is intentional or not, the very first movie that had this twist ending in it, I believe is actually one of the very first movies that was ever made. It came out in 1920, and the movie's called The Cabinet of Dr. Caligari. This is a movie that I take on Symbolism 3, but The Cabinet of Dr. Caligari, if you've never seen it, by all means, watch it. It's a silent film. It has the twist ending of the unreliable narrator, where you watch the movie and you find out the guy telling the story is in a mental institution. He's insane. So you don't know what you've watched is fact, is reality, is a combination of both, is make-believe, is he made it up, is he merged facts with lies or lies with facts, is it all true, is none of it true? Again, this is the unreliable twist ending. Goes back to The Cabinet of Dr. Caligari. Well, what's fascinating is that movie, Caligari, features an actor in it named Conrad Veidt, or Conrad Veidt, depending on how you want to pronounce it. He plays the somnambulist in the movie named Caesar. And a couple years later, after doing Caligari, Conrad Veidt would go on to make a movie known as The Man Who Laughs. And in it, he plays a character known as Gwynplaine, or Gwen Plain. You can pronounce it either way. Gwen Plain is usually how it's pronounced. And he plays this character who can't stop smiling. This is interesting because, and you see where I'm going with this, the character of Gwen Plain, portrayed by Conrad Veidt, is the inspiration for who else but the Joker. The Gwen Plain character, the physical appearance, is what Bob Kane modeled the Joker after when he drew him up. So you have this really great link between these two movies with Caligari and the Joker, where you have the unreliable narrator ending of both movies. The earlier movie starred Conrad Veidt, who would go on to play who else but the Man Who Smiles, Gwen Plain, who would become the inspiration of the Joker, who Phoenix would play years later with the same ending of Cabinet of Dr. Caligari. Sort of a Jungian synchronistic cycle that just seems very odd to me. I don't know if the filmmakers did that intentionally or if that's just synchronicity or coincidence, but that's a very interesting link up, a very interesting nexus between those three movies, between the guy who basically, between Caligari and the actor who basically, inspired the physical appearance of the Joker. And then years later, you have the Joker movie that has the same ending as Caligari in it with the actor who inspired the Joker. Fascinating, and again, just shows you, how this stuff seems to repeat itself, and seems to prove that Jung was correct when it comes to synchronicity.
Rob, what you're talking about with the Cabinet Dr. Caligari, it just seems like early on, movie directors quickly picked up on introducing these archetypal concepts, and it just seems like it's always been there. And you also touch on the same concept in Metropolis, which came out like 7 years later. It was another German film. But one of the nice things about your book, Cinema Symbolism 2, is this long pattern, nearly a full century now, of these ideas being developed. When we go see the movies at the theaters.
Oh yeah, I mean it's you can it predates movies. I mean you can find archetypal imagery in the works of Mozart, in Shakespeare. My God, Wagner.
Mm-hmm.
The ring cycle of Wagner is the Odinic Mysteries. Again you'll find this in the works of Tolkien, and C.S. Lewis and people like that. Lovecraft, Poe, even Melville. So yeah, I mean, this stuff, this is what, kind of what I argue in the book is this stuff, is pervasive throughout history because it's archetypal. It dwells in our subconscious mind and it manifests kind of regardless of our intention. And movie makers are aware of that, so they draw upon this imagery and these themes and these personifications because they know humankind is hardwired to it. So and some people will say, well, that's a form of mind control. Yeah, I mean, I guess maybe it is to an extent, but I don't think any movies are forcing anybody to go see them, or you go and watch a movie and you come out as a Manchurian candidate pre-programmed to shoot somebody or something. I don't think anything like that, but no, it's like I said, if the archetypes and these themes, the dying and the monomyth of Campbell, the resurrected Sun Man, or Solar Messiah. Yeah, I mean these things are pervasive throughout history. They repeat, and you can find them in the tarot cards. And this again is the cornerstone of my research, and is what I wrote the first two movies about. And like I said, Cinema Symbolism 3, I can tell you and the audience, is complete as we do this. I have to still tweak it a little bit. I still have to go through it again myself and take a look at it and edit it. Then I got to turn it over to an editor. So Cinema Symbolism 3 will should be out probably April, May 2020 is what my release date is. And yeah, I'm real happy with the way it came out. And like I said, once that book comes out, it's back to doing radio, and I will return full blast doing radio shows. But it's good to return with you guys and do this Halloween special. You know, to keep it going and to return to the airways, as it were.
Yeah, we're glad to have you here, Rob, and just let us know when Cinema Symbolism 3 is out. We'll do another show. For another aspect of your books that you delve into, maybe I ought to look at settings too, and you do cover the monastic setting of The Name of the Rose, and you work in that movie, and that's another one of those, I think, overlooked movies like Halloween 3, but it is a really creepy movie that does fit in with this holiday. People are mysteriously dying with, after working with these illuminated manuscripts. Can you tell us a little bit about that movie that is frequently overlooked?
I really can't, Mark, because it's not a movie I analyze.
Well, you did. Well, you did mention it.
Well, I mentioned it in one sentence, so I'll have to pass on that one.
Okay. Well, I'm
sorry.
I really thought that was a neat movie. That's all right. Okay, and we'll cross that off the list.
Edit that part out. Yeah, I've never. It's been years since I've seen it, and I just mentioned it in one sentence, and I couldn't analyze it right now.
Okay, and we also can get into, as we look at other settings at this time of the year, there are frequently Masonic symbols in cemeteries, and they do look really creepy. There's the possibility of the connotation being like a pentagram, but there are other meanings to the different fraternal organizations. Can you talk a little bit about that? And maybe as we walk through the graveyards at this time of the year and see some of these symbols on the tombstones, maybe we'll have a different understanding.
Sure. Yeah, you will occasionally, or not occasionally, see Masonic emblems on cemeteries, on grave markers. And of course, cemeteries are a very popular place to visit at Halloween. Maybe not for good intentions, but people go to them nevertheless. But no, the pentagram within Masonry, of course, it has a very negative connotation. It was essentially, when it's 1 point up and 2 points down, it's a positive emblem, like you'll see on, the tip of the wand of Glinda the Good Witch in the Wizard of Oz. That's a white magician when the 1 point's up, 2 points down. When the 2 points are up and the 1 point is down, that's the goat of Mendez. That's left-hand path. That's sort of negative magic. And in Freemasonry, the pentagram is generally, I can't recall off the top of my head if I've ever seen it on its grave marker. Usually it's the square and compasses. But the pentagram does turn up on Masonic, trestle boards and iconography and lodges. There's no doubt about that. It can refer to numerous things. None of them are negative. It can represent the Egyptian dog star Sirius, which is, of course, the Virgin Mother Isis in the Egyptian mysteries. Pythagoras associated symbol was a pentagram, with the 4 points being earth, air, fire, water, and the fifth point being sort of this ethereal element that, mastered the other four. So the pentagram, can have numerous interpretations. What I would just say, when it comes to symbolism in general is, really, when you're dealing with symbolism, whether it be the pentagram or something else, it's really the creator's intent behind it, whether it is being used negatively or positively. No symbol is 100% negative. One symbol is not 100% positive or negative. It can be either or one or the other. A lot of times it's just the creator's intent has to be, what needs to be examined. And this is, you'll hear people say, oh, well, the Masons use a pentagram. The Church of Satan uses a pentagram, yes, but they're not being used in the same context. Just as, the Nazis use the swastika, Native American Indians also use the swastika. Buddhists use it. So you can ascribe different meanings. And this is what I talk about with the symbolism in the book. In the movie books. It's the context in which a lot of this stuff is presented that supplies the answer as to what you're looking for. So, for example, I've mentioned this on here before, and I've mentioned it on other shows. So, for example, and I'm not going to get into the symbolism, but I'll just mention it as an example. So we take the number 88, for example. In the movie Back to the Future, that number has a meaning. In the movie The Exorcist, that number has a meaning. Both are legitimate, but they have different meanings. Both are legitimate interpretations, but they just have, because of the context in which the number is presented, they have different yet legitimate meanings. Another example would be the films Black Swan and Crimson Peak. In the movie Black Swan, the butterflies that cover Nina Sayer's bedroom mean one thing. The butterfly in Crimson Peak means something else. So both have symbolic meaning, both are symbolically important, yet it's the context in which they're presented will help supply you with what the director or the filmmaker is going for by using that symbol. That's really the best way for me to explain it. Always look at it's from me being a lawyer. You have to look at the context or the surrounding circumstances to determine if an act is for example, a first-degree murder, second-degree murder, third-degree murder, or manslaughter. The answer to that question lies in the surrounding circumstances, and it's the exact same analysis that has to occur when looking at movies. The surrounding circumstances or context must be analyzed or examined closely to decipher or discern what the creator's intent is by employing a certain symbol or emblem or theme or character. That is critical to this research.
And well, you do make a analogy, if that's the right word, by going into a little bit of detail on William Blake's Marriage of Heaven and Hell and the balance, duality, information. That's similar to what you were just talking about, but just looking at the context. It is, are there the balances within the symbols of the characters? Are you looking correctly, providing the correct interpretation of one character, and there's the balance of another character somewhere else in the film. I thought that was a good point. You make about approaching, looking at these movies in the way you analyze them.
Right. Well, you have to look at these. But what I don't do is when I analyze a movie, and this is something actually, it's funny you mentioned this because it's something I mentioned in Symbolism 3 in the introduction. When I analyze a movie, I don't do it from a Christian right-wing standpoint or from social justice warrior standpoint, saying all these movies are demonic and evil and satanic and Hollywood is infested with Satanism. I analyze movies like I would a lawyer, completely objectively. I look at everything completely objectively, and that's why, and I'm not saying this to pat myself on the back, that's why my analysis is never wrong, because it's done objectively. I present the information and I don't judge it. I present the analysis of a film and I don't judge it. I treat you, the reader, as the jury. I present the facts, I present the analysis. You, the reader, make up your own mind whether you believe this is good, bad, positive, negative, neutral, evil, good. That's up to you, the reader. Just like a jury, that's up for a jury to decide. I present the facts objectively. I analyze the facts or the movies objectively. As any lawyer would do. If I see something negative, I will point it out. If I see something positive, I will point it out. If I see evidence of mind control, I will point it out. If I see something that's satanic, I will point it out. If I see something that is divine, I will point it out. I look at the movies 100% objectively. I don't come at it from any social, standpoint, pro-Masonic, anti-Masonic, pro-Christian, anti-Christian, pro-Hollywood, anti-Hollywood. I do it 100% objectively. When I see satanic symbolism, I will tell it. When I see evidence of strange coincidences, I will tell you about it. If I see things that don't add up or don't make sense, I will tell you about it. If I see archetypes, I will tell you about them. If I see duality, I will point it out. If I see, tarot archetypes, I will point it out. If I see positive symbolism, I will point it out. If I see things that are negative or anti-Christian, I will tell you. The Star Wars movie, The Force Awakens, Episode 7, has a very deep anti-Christian theme in it, which I talk about in the next Cinema Symbolism book. So I point it all out objectively, and I analyze it, and in the end, it's you, the reader, you, the jury, who decides what to make of the information I've just told you.
And, you even do state in your chapter on the Shining that Kubrick intentionally uses numerology doubles and repeating imagery, but by the end of the book, or the end of the movie, it's just kind of, he doesn't conclude it with being really concrete about what he was intending for using all these dualities and doubles and.
Oh no, he tells you. I know exactly why he's doing it. No, there is a concrete reason why he's doing that, and that is to convey to your subconscious mind. The Overlook Hotel is a Ouroboros, is a endless repetitive cycle that never ends. So he bombards your subconscious mind with endless repetition, repeating numbers, repeating symbolism. There is a motivation for that. And the motivation is that he is trying to convince your subconscious mind that the Overlook Hotel is a symbolic Ouroboros, biting its tail, ending where it begins, forever repeating. That's the underpinning that Kubrick is going for with The Shining.
Okay, from a part where Grady has no memory of killing his daughters with an axe, and then he admits later that he corrected them. I misquoted that one, but yeah, you're really clear on all the other duality. I just used the wrong the wrong passage, but you're we've covered that when you're on earlier, but it's just all these insights that you bring to these movies that we're watching at this time of the year. Really gives us something else to think about, and I'm looking forward to seeing the numerous samples that you give us in Cinema Symbolism 3 next spring.
Yeah, absolutely. Well, for starters, I want to say thank you for having me on again for this Halloween special. It was nice to come on again after having been off the radio for about 4 or 5 months or so. So it's wonderful to return, and thank you again for having me on. And, I thought this Halloween special was terrific. And I can't, like I said, when it's out, I will definitely promote it all over the place. So thank you, Barbara. Cool. Thank you, Mark, for having me on. Halloween, the horror movie, Halloween, part of Halloween now is horror movies. Yep. I know AMC shows a lot of them. I think Turner Classic does. Horror movies are living nightmares. So it should come as no surprise that they are loaded with esoteric imagery. If you like horror movies, the horror genre has produced some of my favorite movies. So they're movies that I love to take on and I love to analyze, and I talk about horror films in all 3 of my cinema books: Cinema Symbolism 1, Cinema Symbolism 2, and then of course Cinema Symbolism 3. I will give a preview briefly, a teaser for some of the movies that we're going to analyze in Cinema Symbolism 3.
Okay, lay it on us.
Yeah, so we're going to do all of Twin Peaks. We're going to do the original 1990-1991 television show. We're going to do the Fire Walk With Me movie, and we're going to do the recent Twin Peaks: The Return that aired on Showtime 2 years ago. That will all finally be broken down. That consumed my summer, I should point out. The summer of 2019 was spent doing nothing but Twin Peaks. It's very dense. It's David Lynch, so it's very complex. Some of the horror movies we're going to do Suspiria, the latest iteration of Suspiria. I did the original one back in Cinema Symbolism 2. So Cinema Symbolism 3 will have the reinvention of Suspiria. We're going to do the Halloween movie that was released last year. This is the direct sequel to the Halloween movie starring Jamie Lee again. That's overloaded with all kind of goodies. So I did that one. We're going to do some archetypes in a made for television movie that came out in 1981. That came out right before Halloween, called Dark Night of the Scarecrow. Arguably one of the best horror TV movies ever made. Probably coming in right behind Salem's Lot there. That came out in October of '81. I'm going to do that one. We're going to do The Witch by Robert Eggers. That's a very interesting movie. A lot going on in that. He's just released one right now as we're doing this called The Lighthouse, which looks very symbolic. I haven't seen it yet, but I look forward to it. So what's some of the other horror movies that's in there? Suspiria, Halloween, The Witch. There's a couple more in there that it's eluding me. We're going to do movies. Some of the other movies that I'm picking on, again, Lynch. So we'll be doing Wild at Heart and Eraserhead. We're going to be revisiting The Sacred Feminine with movies like The Red Shoes and Red Sparrow with Jennifer Lawrence. Films such as that. I'm going to be doing I got a whole chapter on Hitchcock with Bates Motel and Psycho. Loads of things, yeah. So, like I said, the book is actually done and it's complete. But it still has to go through an editorial phase, the graphic design. So I am looking for a March, April 2020 release of the book, perhaps May at the absolute latest. It won't go beyond that. So once the book's out, I will be returning to radio and podcasting in earnest. And when that happens, I look forward to returning to the Nightlight with Barbara DeLong and Mark Eddy. And I'm sure we'll have another terrific show with a whole slate of new movies to talk about.
Yeah,
I'm sure you will.
Rob,
I hate to interrupt you, but our time is up, Mark. So I'm going to have to thank you and Robert. This is an amazing way for us to kick off Halloween. And all you trick-or-treaters out there, be careful, stay safe. Don't eat all the candy at once. And those of you who are grown-ups, tune in again for another good show as they unroll here. Mark and I are going to have a lot of really good stuff coming up. So good night, everybody, and thanks for listening.